Mr. President of the Court of Justice, honourable members of the Court of Justice, Minister, ambassadors, fellow ombudsmen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honour to address this audience on this lovely late autumn evening in Luxembourg, and this is indeed a very proud moment for myself and for my family who are with me here today. I thank again the European Parliament for electing me to office. With this oath, I assume a great responsibility, that of leading the institution of the European Ombudsman, to bring it on to its next stage of relevance and of impact, to bring it closer to the ideals set for it through the Treaty of Maastricht. If I succeed, it will be because I begin my work today on the foundation stone that is the legacies of my two predecessors, Mr. Jakob Söderman and Professor Nikiforos Diamandouros. Our shared trajectory spans Europe to the north in Finland, to the south in Greece, and now to the west in Ireland, with our material base in the centre, in the beautiful city of Strasbourg, the seat of the European Parliament. Jakob Söderman took the abstract ideal of a European Ombudsman and turned it into a living, breathing, working reality. Professor Diamandouros, his task made more challenging and yet more vital through the accession of many new member states, tested and broke through the fledgling boundaries of this new institution and moved further to embed it not just in the consciousness of the citizen, but critically in the consciousness of the administration. I thank them both for that legacy, a gift to me as I take my first steps as Ombudsman, and I thank Professor Diamandouros most sincerely for the engaged and generous way in which he has guided me through this transition period. It is a tribute to his deep sense of public service, but most particularly to his commitment to the institution of the European Ombudsman. My journey to this place prompted a high level of engagement with the representatives of citizens from all parts of Europe, the politicians elected to the biggest democratic assembly in the world. I spoke to them of my ambitions for the institution. In turn, they spoke to me of their home place, of their own personal ambitions, and of their ambitions for their people. I saw and heard through the voices a Europe in all of its at times fractured diversity, but also in its shared humanity. At times also through that journey, it was easy to touch the occasional cynicism of a political play, to feel the weight of a dry bureaucracy. But I recall one beautiful April morning as I stepped onto the esplanade outside the Parliament building in Brussels and saw arrayed across the arc of that lovely space a large visual installation that traced the journey of this union from the hell of Auschwitz to a December day just last year, when the Nobel Prize for Peace was accepted on behalf of the European Union by the Presidents of the Parliament, the Commission and the Council. Like other citizens of other member states, I too looked across that arc of tapestries in search of a reference to my home place, and I found it. A photograph of the Queen of England walking with the President of Ireland across a field in a northeastern county, a field on which a battle was once fought that would cue murderous divisions in my country for centuries to come. And now, the union of these two women was marking their symbolic end. And so what I read across the length of that arc of images was a message that despite the cynicism that weaves occasionally through the halls and meeting rooms and spaces of Brussels and Strasbourg and Luxembourg, or a disillusionment that might justifiably be felt by those in Europe suffering the fallout of economic collapse, of racism, of a denial still of human rights, of a failure fully to embed the rule of law, that there still remains a striving for a democratic ideal of peace, of respect for human dignity, and of an acceptance of difference. Those values must remain the driving force of all of our endeavours. And all of that speaks to my own ambition for the institution of the European Ombudsman. Because this much I know, that this institution, small though it may be, and linked to the sometime aridness of public administration, encapsulates nonetheless a global democratic ideal born in Sweden over 200 years ago, and now given concrete expression through the creation of Ombudsman offices on all 5 continents. The 2 great waves of Ombudsman flourishing after the Second World War, and again following the seismic events in Europe in the late 1980s and 1990s, coincided with a profound public craving for democracy, for the rule of law, and for the rights of citizens. During both periods, many countries quickly moved to create an office of the Ombudsman, fully aware in many cases that they had neither the institutional supports nor yet a sufficient embedding of the rule of law fully to sustain them without a struggle. But their creation was nonetheless a profound act of faith, a hope that in time they would serve the democratic dream of those who had struggled for their own country's freedom, for the human rights of their citizens. Critically, those offices would also serve to help to embed and to enable the legitimacy of the new regimes. Without citizen trust in the new institutions, the young regimes would struggle to survive and to thrive. Observe perhaps the parallel with the European Union of 2013, where a crisis of legitimacy continues to cast a deep shadow. Negativity and division is rising across Europe, the trust of citizens in European institutions is declining, and many feel their voice simply does not count. The people of Europe now demand not just the pretty words of treaties and charters, but their day-to-day translation by the institutions into policies and actions that speak to the reality of their lives. My ambition is a simple one: to help the institutions of the Union to be their own best selves, to live up to the ambitions they have set for themselves and that have been set for them through the treaties of the Union and through the Charter of Fundamental Rights. As the citizen of a country currently under the financial supervision of the Troika, of the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank and the European Commission, I am acutely aware of the pressures on individuals and families brought on by austerity, and I have had daily professional experience of how an administration attempts to cope during a crisis that may be economic in its origin, but which is felt by the people as one that impacts on their very humanity as they suffer its social, cultural, political and financial effects. And never more so than at a time of recession and austerity does the public administration have a duty to treat its citizens with the utmost openness, fairness, respect and sensitivity. I pledge today to play my part in helping the EU institutions to fulfil those most solemn and vital of duties. Mr. President of the Court, it has become customary in my country on special occasions to recite the words of our poet Seamus Heaney. Seamus, as you know, passed away very recently, and I think therefore it is particularly fitting that I would speak some of his beautiful words on this day. I have chosen a few brief lines from a poem he composed for the day that 10 new member states acceded to the European Union in May 2004, at a time when my country was honoured to hold the presidency. The poem, Beacons at Bealtaine, celebrated the ancient feast of bright fire, a homecoming, when strangers came and were welcomed despite their difference of language, despite the lack of shared historical experience. So Seamus wrote, "So on a day when newcomers appear, let it be a homecoming, and let us speak the unstrange word, as it behoves us here. Move lips, move minds, and make new meanings flare, like ancient beacons, signalling peak to peak, from Middle Sea to North Sea, shining clear." I hope, Mr. President, through the inspiration of my predecessors, the support of the European Parliament, and the committed work of a staff who I already know to be exemplary, that I may, as European Ombudsman, also try to move lips, to move minds, and to make new meanings flare. I thank you for the courtesy and for the honour that you and the Court have shown to me and to my family here today.